It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday, and my OBS did something very weird when I started this, so hopefully this is okay. A really good week in comments this week. The philosophy of game difficulty video encouraged a lot of discussion, and the thing I really liked about it was I mean, some of it was snarky and not productive, but a lot of it was just a dialogue. And I mean, it started as a, hey, I found this article in the Games Press that was interesting, and I had issues with some of it, and I'd like to expand on that or check a few things, but overall it was quality. And then other people sort of did the same thing to me for the most part. It shows it can still happen, and that's cool. I think that, I mean, it's always great for me to be able to praise an article because so many of them are just clickbait, dashed off emotional crap, that it's really nice when one of them isn't, and we can have a discussion about it. So yay. So if you like this sort of content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. I really like these broad topic deep dive things as opposed to talking about a particular game. And what's really weird is when I used to do these things, they bombed in terms of traffic. Now they're doing pretty well. So I don't know what's different. I don't know whether YouTube changed the algorithm. I don't know if it's just luck, but I'm going to keep watching because I prefer those sorts of topics where you can really get it and pull it apart. And then we're going to do some stuff on mansplaining in a bit, but let me get through this one because, you know, I want to take a few comments. There were a lot of requests for more specifics about difficulty and stuff like that. That's really difficult just because there are so many variables. And this is one of the things that is so cool about making games. There are so many choices, and you really need a design philosophy to point you in the right direction. And in my opinion, things like, you know, Cyberpunk 2077, it shipped a hot mess because of not a flawed design philosophy, but a lack of a refined one. As opposed to something like Mass Effect Andromeda that came at it from make the ships look really cool. Nobody cares what the people look like, right? We're just going to mocap it and play the ball where it lies. That was just a bad design decision. Whereas Cyberpunk, when it launched, the design philosophy just seemed to be make it cool. Well, what do you mean by cool? Just make it cool. Well, what do you mean by cool? Just make the game cool, okay? Everything has to be cool. Unless you define cool, you get a mess that's all over the place. And so that's not people not wanting to make a good game. That's not people being lazy. That's a lack of a refined vision. And no matter what vision you choose, you're going to lock out some people. More on that in a bit. Taxonomies in game dev or in video games in general, in game criticism, critique. This isn't criticism, it's critique, or just lexicon. It's a real challenge, especially because certain combinations of types of difficulty multiply the difficulty in ways that others don't. An example of that is combining a requirement for exploration like Elden Ring does. They don't spoon feed you how to play. It's just trial and error. It also punishes mistakes. So trial and error becomes stressful. Now, you can balance that out, but the more you combine those two, it just exponentially increases the difficulty if you both require trial and error and exploration and really punish mistakes. One comment was that in Elden Ring, players are completely missing the optional combat tutorial at the beginning of the game. That's an easy patch. And it's interesting that people would complain about Elden Ring specifically because some people may remember back in the day, do you remember if it was The Witcher 2? That the combat tutorial was totally removed from the game or something. Like it was, and I like optional tutorials because on second playthroughs or something like that, it just eliminates early game tedium, which encourages replay value. And I'm really surprised the number of people who are replaying Elden Ring. That game is obviously doing something right. I do think that much like Ubisoft always Ubisoft, but there's something about From Software that game critics think that they have this additional permission to pile on this developer. And it's possible because either they just have no contact with the developer or the developer accepts criticism. They don't punish criticism, ironically enough. And so it's just pile on. It's very notable which companies the games press savagely attacks and which ones they give a relatively easy pass to. The ones that give a relatively easy pass to are the ones that tend to restrict access for people who criticize them. And Blizzard, Activision was one of the absolute worst. There is EA's pretty bad too. But EA just sort of restricts in general to avoid any sort of bad. But the ones I find that restrict tend to also treat their staff worse. So keep that in mind. For all the bad PR Ubisoft got during that period, and there were legitimate problems at that company that were ignored, the order of magnitude at some of these other places seems to be far, far, far worse. And that doesn't let Ubisoft off the hook. But it's just true that the games press were brutal on Ubi before that even came out. But anyway, this is off topic. I do think From Software is one that games critics are unduly harsh on. And I think that's because the difficulty in the games makes them feel bad. And I admit, for a while, the difficulty in From Software games made me feel bad until I understood the community and understood everybody struggles with something. It's the point. And this is where we get to, and obviously they wanted to sell a butt ton of copies with Elden Ring, and so they changed that, which indicates the difficulty in past games is a deliberate choice. Now, you can think the balance is off in certain games. I know a lot of From Software fans who really didn't like Sekiro because the timing windows were way, way too short compared to other games. That's a fair comment, right? Like, no, it's just too... The argument is that is a processing accessibility issue, not something you can overcome with practice. Okay, fair point. They don't get it right all the time. But that's different from, well, I disagree with the philosophy of making hard games. You should have an easy mode. And it's that demand that I think sets a lot of people off. And I want to pivot to a comment here from somebody self-defining as a disabled gamer. Now, again, I am a gamer with a disability. I have problems with my hands. So I'm just going to read the comment. And then we're going to analyze the comment, okay? So, like 4 O's. I am locked out of really amazing experiences because difficulty options aren't in line with the artistic vision. Smiley. I've been a gamer since I was 5 and don't mind challenges, but as a now disabled gamer, I wonder why people are so against difficulty settings because, in my most recent experience, Resident Evil Village, I found myself upping the difficulty in subsequent playthroughs up to Village of Shadows, and I did 6 playthroughs back to back, whereas games like Soulsborne don't give me this option, so I bounce off because I have a huge backlog and the ability time to master it. And I lack the ability time to master it, sorry. I understand the philosophy of game design, but difficulty settings can add to the experience, and there's nothing stopping Soulsborne fans from upping the difficulty to above the traditional original difficulty as per the original design for true veterans of the series. God of War Valkyrie fights, some difficulty, some challenge. I was playing on the easiest setting available and I leveled Kratos up as much as I could and only just took down 2 or 3, lol. Horizon 2 Forbidden West, pullcaster issues. I didn't have any issues with this and I have spent over 100 hours on my first playthrough. As with all games, mileage may vary. And they go on and on and on and on. My overall question is, how does making games more accessible detract from the art design, level design, character design, etc., especially if you include the option for the authentic experience for the diehard Soulsborne fans? Okay, first of all, I'm not sure. It's not the greatest argument, commenter, when you want someone to listen to your struggles with a game and then you minimize theirs with, I didn't have a problem with it. Rules for me, not for thee. When I was playing on Twitch, I mean, I don't feel the need to defend my struggle with the pullcaster. The hitbox on Horizon Forbidden West did a weird janky thing at times but the pullcaster was jank. Period. End of story. Just because somebody didn't particularly have a problem with it doesn't mean it wasn't jank. There was jank. But the first issue with this comment for me is, I didn't have a problem with it. Was something I had issues with. But now you want inclusion, commenter, for things amazing experiences that you want to play but find too hard. The thing about many of the From Software games is the difficulty is the point. It is woven into the theme of the game, not so much the narrative, because most From Software games, not most, but the From Software games tend to be light on the narrative side. It is more theme, especially something like Bloodborne and the idea of the actions of the playable character. Sekiro really doubled down on this. The actions of the playable character affect the whole world, and the playable character's failures are like, poisoning the world sort of thing. The difficulty, the struggle, the experience is the art direction. Everything feeds off that narrative of failing again and again and again and again and again. And without that difficulty, I argue, especially Bloodborne, would feel kind of pointless because it's a lot more tone and mood than story, right? The dialogue sections are very short. You have to infer a lot of what's going on in the world, and that is a legitimate artistic choice. If a ton of game deaths, you have died, are part of that artistic direction, then yes, asking them to nerf the difficulty, arguing accessibility, is telling them to nerf their artistic direction. And I personally, as somebody who could not finish Bloodborne because there was too much strafing and it caused too much pain on my hands, I don't want them to change the game for me. I played the game as far as I could. That friggin' spider just caused me too much pain. And all right, I got as far as I could. I moved on to something else. Fine. I'm going to really research future From Software games to make sure that persistent strafing problem doesn't persist. Now, Horizon Forbidden West also had some of that, but it wasn't as bad. It's one, the previous God of War games, I had issues with the mashing to open up the chess. They've since, I think they changed the setting, or now it's press and hold, but they have listened to that. That doesn't change the difficulty of the game. You cannot demand a developer make a game more inclusive in terms of challenge, because that means anybody can demand anything from developers. And then we get into this paradigm where we're providing incentive to bully game developers to make the game the loudest mob wants them to make. And that's why I'm not for that. We need to take away the incentives for people screaming at game developers and calling them a whole bunch of names and engaging in pile-ons and just, review bombing and all that stuff. We have to discourage that practice actively, not give incentives for people to do that, because it's stressing out really good game devs and causing them to have to take stress leave. Okay? Make a valid argument. Appeal to the intellect. Appeal to make a good point. So, and there's got to be a better way for game devs to hear more constructive feedback that is, I don't know the word, but isn't based on do it or else, right? Enough of this emotional blackmail. Enough of this, you're not letting gamers with disabilities in because your game is hard. No. Your timing hitboxes are just way, way too short. Give me a break. Your other games were better that way and still very challenging. That's something to listen to and go, all right. And obviously, Elden Ring, they went in a very different direction. But the accessibility argument not only is just, joining a pile-on, but it does also insult gamers with disabilities, profound disabilities, who still manage to beat those games. So let's be decent to everyone here and not engage in psychological blackmail tactics, okay? Because devs work hard. Game dev is stressful as it is. They want to make really good games that people enjoy. Let's minimize the pile-ons just based on who has the loudest mob. That's why I feel strongly about this argument. So let's move on to the mansplaining one. Ha ha ha. Touching less of a nerve. This went pretty well. Some people missed what I was saying in places. I'll do what I can to clear things up, but I also want to read some comments. One thing I really enjoyed about the comments with this video is that people shared personal experiences. And that meant they felt comfortable enough sharing personal experiences, which made me very happy, because Manly Mondays is designed to encourage men to talk about their feelings, especially their vulnerabilities. So that seems to be working. That's happiness. Okay, awesome. Go team. So first comment, was thinking about this the other day. When I explain something personal interest or personal, it is because I think it isn't because I think the other person is dumb. It's because I don't think the other person should care about what I care about, and I guess by extension care about me. Okay, commenter, hug to you. That's gotta be a difficult place to feel that way. Another share. Your comment about mom being checked out because she was overwhelmed actually made me think. That is me right now. I let my kids watch screens too much because too much on my plate. I'm trying to change. I'm just not sure how to do it. And I hear that from parents a lot lately. It's tough now that we're coming up on summer, maybe things will ease up again. But with COVID, a lot of parents were checked out for many, many reasons and had a lot more to do, especially if they were frontline workers. So don't beat yourself up about it. Practice that self-compassion we talk about on Wellness Wednesdays. Focus on the little bits you can improve, right? Any time with your kids, where you are validating them as people, not just producers of stuff, right? You know, your kids are good because they're good people, because they're kind, because they're considerate, because this, that, the next thing, not because they did a thing, right? And you don't need a ton of time to validate that message. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I really feel for that commenter as well. Somebody else said, my mother literally says this, quote, "The value of a man is based on his usefulness to a woman. Thank goodness for video games." Yeah. Yeah, this is a message. And that's why I think a lot of guys are about mansplaining, because it was hammered home to them by women in their formative years. Be useful. And now that they're trying to execute that training, they're being told you're mansplaining. I totally get why it's confusing and frustrating, and that's why I made the video. Someone else said, "I see your reasoning about what makes mansplaining behavior unique to men. It makes a lot of sense." I did not intend to give that message, because I said women do this too. Women are condescending too. So that's what I said. One of these things that, okay, something got lost in translation here. Anyway, however, I still think the term itself is sexist. There's plenty of non-gendered terms that mean the same thing: condescending, patronizing, infantilizing. Let's use those. I agree. I do think that since we have other words that don't have a charge that convey the same message, let's use those other words. You guys know I believe in being precise in speech. And when you take out lazy words, the word bitch is on that list for me. Mansplaining. I'm sure there are a bunch of others, but they're not coming to mind right now, and I'm mindful of the time. But you take those words out of your vocabulary and your language becomes more precise. Your thinking becomes more precise. What actually was my issue with this comment? Is it, find a word that isn't mansplaining, right? What don't I like about this particular person? Take out the word bitch. You have to be more precise. So yeah, I agree. More on gendered language in a bit. Listening to this, I'm reminded a couple arguments Ms. Kersner made previously. It's okay to call me Leanna. I appreciate the formality, though. First, that people tend to start their arguments with an emotional reaction, then try to justify it. Second, talking about how terms like Mary Sue, that's another one. Thank you, commenter. And now mansplaining are poorly defined. It's connected. When people look for a way to justify a reaction, reaching for some catchphrase is quicker and easier than making a proper argument. Don't like a character because she's a Mary Sue. Don't like a man's argument? Well, it's because he's mansplaining. The problem is that terms have stopped having a clear definition and therefore become useless. Well, as the commenter pointed there, they're not useless. They're a great shutdown tactic without having to back up your reaction with an argument. And I think some people do it because often their more well-thought arguments are dismissed. And that's why I try, when anybody attempts to form an argument that has any substance to it at all, I try to give it attention and respond saying, here are the issues for me with this, instead of just doing that dismissal. I think that if we all take accountability for upholding our end of that, our part of that, online discussions will become much better, much more productive. About the do you need help or do you want help? There's a third variant for another situation. Can I help? This one is not about whether the person requires help. It's about you being there, ready to be helpful, ready to be useful. Yeah. That's a good addition. Thank you for that. I've run out of time. Now let's get into the needed to be needed, because that was a thing a lot. I think you'll find much of this connected to the phenomenon of so-called control freaks, and I'd like to see a video on that. I understand you need to be needed. My family needs me, and I'm so used to that I don't know what I'll do when and if they no longer need me. I'll be lost, but I'm self-aware enough to know that this extreme responsibility has also caused me to develop a need for control over my environment and other people. My situation has conditioned me into a control freak, and I hate it. Another commenter said, how would you all define the difference between needing to be needed and the want to be needed? Is it just a matter of being able to function, or is there some aspect of well-being in there as well? And as the first commenter sort of zeroed in on, it is how much it makes you have this need to control. Because needing too much control over things leads to misery. And a lot of people go, oh, you're so controlling, and it's about your impact on other people. It's primarily about the impact on yourself. I'm going to drop potentially a bit of a bomb here, and I don't mean to. It's just people will hear this and just freak out and go on tangents. So please don't do that. But the issue I have with a particular personality, not saying the name yet because I want to give my explanation before I say the name so people don't freak out and not listen to the rest of what I'm saying. But a particular guru out there right now has such a tight need for control. And he is clearly extremely unhappy. And you watch him try to sort people into boxes and sort behavior into boxes. And he just needs so much control over everything, or he can't handle. And he talks about authoritarian tolerance and all that stuff. Of course, you know, I'm talking about Jordan Peterson. And my big issue with the guy on an ongoing basis is he clearly needs some help. He clearly needs a hug. And I am very concerned because he doesn't believe in happiness. People feel temporarily better because all his control levers in his stuff make the world temporarily feel like it makes sense. And so people feel temporarily better, but it's actually leading people in precisely the wrong direction. You become more functional, more resilient, more helpful. People want to be around you more if you relinquish the need to control things you can't control. And that takes a process of work and hanging on to things so tightly because you need to be needed is part of a paradigm of people can't want you around if they need you around. People can't say yes to something if no is not an option. It's the coercive factor. It's the forced element of being needed versus being wanted. People do tend to resent over time feeling dependent. Most healthy people want to feel somewhat self-sufficient, right? And so if you need to be needed, you're inadvertently denying other people that self-sufficiency. I don't have a lot of time to get into it, but that's where I'm coming from there. Now, I love this comment and I want to land on this because a commenter went on at length about the different way men call each other out. And I found this really fascinating. I learned something with this, calling out the condescending behavior in this point. It said, men will call it out. They just don't do it in the same way every time, and it's not necessarily immediate. If the one receiving it is getting it justly, then they will either improve or be a jerk about it. The jerk will make excuses and blame anything, anyone, and be vocal about it. Okay, so we've got, hey, hint, guy is more of a jerk. Okay, gets louder. The one that improves will call it out only if the condescension continues unwarranted. Okay. The way he calls it out will depend on how severe it is in environment. If it's a less professional setting, it'll be a blunt statement or action that says, jackass, what is wrong with you? WTF is wrong with you? Okay, I hope that made sense to people. If the condescension is unwarranted and in a situation where being blunt and direct isn't an option, like some self-important fool who wants to flex their meager bit of power or clout in a hierarchy, men will be more subtle with the call out. They'll mock the guy amongst each other until the person's poor character is known to everyone. That will strip him of any respect that existed among the group and turn him into a joke. He'll get the call out and either fix it or double down. Either way, the call out happens. Whatever the situation is, the call out will never be some variation of, hey, you're being a bit condescending, stop speaking to me in that way, or some other statement that is about identifying the transgression and labeling as emotionally hurtful. It'll be more about checking the person and ensuring mutual respect is maintained. That's very interesting. That was a bit, some people may have had trouble following that logic, but basically it's the way I took that is the reason that doesn't work with groups of women, and this is me adding to it, not what the commenter said. The reason the male call out of, well, that guy's a jerk. Yeah, that guy's totally a jerk, right? There's a few reasons why that would work with men. And now that the commenter has called it out, like pointed it out and explained it, I'm like, yeah, okay, I see how that works in business structures. There just aren't enough women at sort of the C-suite level to be part of that. And because, so many times men and women are unnaturally segregated in spaces, that's a behavior women don't see. But also there's so much cattiness in female spaces. This is this toxic femininity thing that doesn't get talked about enough. There is so much gossip and so much cattiness in all female spaces that those sorts of call outs won't work because everybody's cutting up everybody anyway, because it's not, it's if I cut somebody down, then I'm bigger as a result. And I'm sure men do that as well. But that is just an undeniable socialization thing that we are seeing more with men, because, the more traditional male conflict resolution things being somewhat demonized, they're taking on more of the backbiting and the gossiping and the spreading rumors and all that stuff. So maybe that's part of the problem. I see issues with it because general opinion of somebody is subjective. And I know a lot of personally Anna Cares clients are terrified of being, awkward or weird because of gossip at workplaces, and general regard for somebody is life or death. I do think there's a benefit to being more assertive. Now, this commenter said sometimes, like in a non-professional setting, they'll really be, hey, what, WTF is wrong with you? But then I got thinking about how people used to talk about games journalists when I was a games journalist. And they'd never say anything out loud. They'd do exactly what this commenter said. It was generally known that certain figures, certain games journalists were just epic, raging assholes. They might get the scoops, they might get the leaks, but they were bad people. They were terrible people. They were unpleasant to be around. And this was just known. But that never got to the public. It never got to the public that people had a low opinion of some of these people. And I think that was part of what led to the upheaval in 2014, 2015. The public didn't get the, hey, like, we don't like dealing with these guys either. Interesting, yeah? Interesting how it all sort of comes together. And I don't have any conclusions about this. I'm going to sit with it and I'm going to think about it. But thank you, commenter, for that. And that was not mansplaining because it was solicited comments. That was something I guess I didn't realize. I've observed this behavior. I just didn't see that as a an intent to solve this very problem, an intent to curb certain behaviors. Okay. Interesting stuff. I do think, though, as I said, that ultimately it's best to just watch the gendered language in always, whether it's Mary Sue, whether it's mansplaining, whether it's, bitch, which gets used in different ways for men and women. Whenever anything has a gendered charge to it, I do think we should stop and take a look at it. It's not the "it's okay when we do it" thing. I mean, jokes are one thing. There's a place for it. Like Twitch on Tuesday. That got very punchy. But yeah, I'm glad to see commenters saying, let's just not do this to anybody. You're good people, commenters. I am calling out your good personness. Okay? All right. We'll wrap up there for the week. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it who can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.